Hi everyone. Welcome back to a new video. Today is day 12 of our 30 days of JavaScript challenge. So, in the past few days we covered function transformations, and now we have completed the questions of function transformation, and we will be moving to promises and time. So, these promises are one of the most important topics that can be discussed in JavaScript. So, before moving on to the question, in this 30 days of JavaScript challenge, we have around 8 questions from promises. So, before moving on and solving these problems, what we will do, we will first discuss what is actually promises. So, we have a clear idea about what we are doing and what we have to do and what is actually a promise. So what is a promise? So when we are going to a website, say we have a website, okay, and in this website we have an image. So sometimes image take time to load, right? So during this loading time, right, we have uh, the other text in the website. They are not they do not wait for this image to get loaded, right? This image will get displayed in a parallel way. This image is getting loaded, but this text will appear, right? So the way in which two operations occur at the same time, it is called asynchronous operation. If, let's say, this image was getting loaded, okay, and this image was getting loaded and we were having synchronous operation. Let's say this image is still getting loaded. Now after this image will get loaded and it will appear on the screen, then only the text will come. So what it will make, it will make the user view inefficient. So avoid these things, what we do, we use promises to make our website more efficient, right? Now let's see, how do we implement promises. So let's say we have a URL, okay. So in this URL we have some data or JSON file, okay, and we need to fetch this and display it. So now what will happen if we are having synchronous operation, okay, this JSON file, okay, it will take time, some time to load, right? Now in this synchronous operation, what will happen, the other statements will wait for this JSON file to means to be displayed in the website, then only it will move forward. But in the asynchronous, where we are using promises, what will happen, the URL will work, right? This URL will be fetching the data in the background, and the rest of the program or the rest of the code will execute in a parallel way. So this is the what we say advantage of having a asynchronous operation, okay. Now if we see, right, before promises we used to have callback functions, okay. So what used to happen, if we have a promise, okay, so we haven't seen the syntax and all, let me I will emphasize on it, but before moving on to it, we will see what is a callback, okay. So what is a callback function? It is a function, okay, in which we are returning another function, means it is a function and we are returning some value like this, right? So when we used to have callback function, it is not necessary that sometime what happens, that we have a data, okay, we have some API and we need to fetch data from it, and after the data is fetched, okay, we need to some perform some other operation also. So what we used to have, one callback function, this is one callback function, okay, and inside this what we used to have, inside this we used to have another callback function, okay. And if like in normal way it is okay, but in the when we go to development side, there is a possibility that we need to fetch more than one data according to one or given condition. So there can be a chance that where there are more than one callback function inside the inside other callback function, right? So if you see this code is not very easily understandable, right? Although it is indented in this way, but for a person who does not know this code, it will be very hard to understand, right? So this system of having a callback function another inside another callback function, it is called callback hell. Okay, so the name only emphasizes that it can be so hard that it has been named as callback hell, right? So in order to avoid this problem, promises came into picture. And what these promises do, now before I will tell you the significance of it, I will show you the syntax of the promises. So how do we declare a promise? So the basic promise syntax is, if this is a variable, okay, so we create a new promise and it has two parameters. Okay, so let's say we have a work, okay, and before completing it, right, we have another stage called pending stage, right? Let's say we are doing some work, okay, we have to do work 1 and work 2, okay, and this work, okay, you have completed this work, and now until you will complete this work, right, means you have work 1, okay, and work 2, you cannot do work 2 until you have completed work 1. What I mean by this is, let's say you have to fetch data from URL, right? So once the data has been fetched, then only you will be able to either display the output or display any other message, right? So until this data has been fetched from the URL, this is in pending stage, right? So a promise has three stages basically. One is pending, and after pending, either the promise will, we have a promise, and it will move from pending to, either the promise will be completed and it will be called resolved. So either the promise will get resolved or it will get rejected. So how how can a promise get rejected, right? So let's say we have to fetch data from an API, okay, and the URL has some error in it, maybe, or the API from which we were trying to fetch does not exist anymore, or the data does not exist in that API anymore. So what will happen? There will be some error, right, and it will prevent the task which we had tried to do from completing, right? So in such cases, the promise will get rejected and we will get some error. So now let's see the syntax of promise. So once we have created this promise, right, now we have this promise, so it is either getting resolved or getting rejected. So when it is getting resolved, it will return some data, right? If we have an object, okay, and it has some, let's say this is a key and this is value, and in our API we are trying to fetch this only. Now when we are able to fetch this, we have already fetched the data, then what we will do, we have to either display it or perform some operations. So in such cases, when the promise is getting resolved, okay, so then we will send that data into the then block, okay, so it will move to then method, and it will perform some operation or it will be displayed as some result. In the case when if the promise is not fulfilled, the promise will move on to the catch block, and it will show the error, like the error can be anything, that the URL does not exist anymore or something, whatever the error it has been facing, it will show there. So now we have the syntax, the proper syntax of promise, right? We create a new promise, and after that it is either fulfilled or it can be either rejected, or it can be resolved and rejected. So if we have already get means the promise is resolved, then it will be returning some result, right? It will either now this has some result, and in case when it is not this is opening bracket and this is closing bracket, and if it is not resolved, then it will throw some error, right? What is missing or what the error is there. So we will catch it in a catch block, so here it will be displaying the error. Now we know the basic syntax of a promise. Now, as discussed previously, right, that callback hell, that calling one function another, inside that we are calling another callback function. So in order to avoid that, promise came, right, and in promise, to avoid that callback hell, we have chaining of the promises. Okay, we can chain the promises together using then method. Okay, now what will happen? Let's say we have one promise. Means what we have to do, like I have an API in which I have saved the student name. Okay, and what I have to do, that uh, after I have fetched the student name, what I need to do, I need to go inside that, inside every student there is some data related to the result. So what I need to do is, let's say this student is object is like this, it has a name. Okay, let's say it has name Ankita, and we are we have another URL inside this. And what this URL will have, it will have some, let's say, marks of that student. Okay, so it is saved like this, marks of with ID. Okay, this is just basic what I am trying to show. So what I have to do, once I have entered this student URL, okay, what I need to do, I need to fetch the marks from this. Okay, so only when this promise one will get fulfilled or resolved, then only I will be able to go for the another promise, right? Then once I am able to fetch Ankita and this URL, then only I will be able to fetch marks, right? So, in such cases, what we have to do, we will simply chain these promises together. How we will do it? Let this promise one, it will, it is getting resolved, then it will send some result, and after this only we will have the promise 2 as execution, right? So what we will do, this promise 1 after getting resolved, it will return promise 2, and then this promise 2 will either be resolved or it will show an error. In order, we can do one more thing, that like we have here then, right, it is getting resolved here, and we can do catch also, means we can catch the error here also. But it is like, um why do we need to write catch twice, right, when we can have, we can catch the error once only. Means for both of them we can get the error at once, then we don't need to write catch twice, right? Here we are using then two times, because for this the output will be different and this the output will be different, right? So what we will do, when the promise 1 is resolved, we will return second promise, and the second promise, if it is getting resolved, it will display some result, otherwise it will move to the catch block and handle the error there. Now we know what is basically the chaining of promises, right? It is the link, means, so resolving or the catching, resolving or the rejecting of the promise, second promise after one promise is getting fulfilled, right? We can, means what we can do, we can catch the error here also, but it does not make any sense, because we can directly pass the error of this here only now. If promise one is not getting fulfilled, it will not go inside, right? So directly it will catch the error and throw it here only. So with one catch block, our problem is getting fulfilled, so it is not required to write the catch block twice. Now we have the idea of what is promises and how we can chain promises together, and the use of promises, right? So now we will move on to the question. So now we will move on to the question, right? So the question is add two pointers. This is an easy level question. Now what they have said in this question, let's see that we need, we have two promises, right? We have promise 1 and promise 2, and what we need to do is we need to return a new promise. Okay, we need to return a new promise, and they have told that promise 1 and promise 2 will both resolve with a number. Okay, and the returned promise should resolve with the sum of those two numbers. So let's try to understand what they are saying. Now what they have said here, this is promise 1. Okay, so this promise 1 will get resolved, and it will get resolved by one number. Okay, so here they have given, right, this they are forming new promise and it is getting resolved, and this is getting resolved with 2 here, right? And in the second one, what is happening, this new promise they have created, and this is getting resolved by 5. So what they have told, that after this both are getting resolved, what we need to do is, we need to return a new promise. Okay, after this both are resolved, we need to return a new promise, which is the sum of these both numbers. Okay, which is the sum of these both numbers, that is, the output return should be 7. So in the same way, let's say if they are forming a new promise, okay, and this and this new promise is getting resolved, this new promise is getting resolved by 20. Okay, for promise 1 it is getting resolved by 20, and promise 2 is getting resolved by 3. So what we need to return as output is 20 plus 3, that is 23. So the new promise returned should be resolved by the sum of promise 1 resolved number and the promise 2 resolved number, that is 20 and 3. So the output return should be 23. So now we have the idea of what we have to do in this question, right? So there is a function called promise.all. So what this function does is, basically it will take an array of promises. Okay, so this function takes an array of promises. Okay, and when these are resolved, right, so after these promises, array of promises are fulfilled, then it will return a result as a new promise. Okay, so what promise dot all does, it takes an array of promises. After they are resolved, all these promises, right, this array of promises are resolved, then it returns a new promise, this promise dot all, it returns a new promise, and this new promise, after getting resolved, it will perform some operation. Okay, some value or some result we will get here. So basically, after this array of promises are resolved, this new promise formed will be acting like the means the usual promises only. The only difference is, it is forming after the array of promises are getting resolved. So in this question, what we have to do, like we have been given here, that we have promise 1 and promise 2. Okay, so in our this method promise dot all, what we will do, we will pass this promise 1 and promise 2, and we know that this promise 1 and promise 2 will get resolved, because they have told that this promise 1 and promise 2 will get resolved, and they will return a number, resolved number, right? So after getting resolved, it will create a new promise, right? And now this new promise will carry a value, so we will have to perform some operation as result, right? So it has some values here. Now we have taken array here, right? So the values that these promises will return will be in the form of an array only. So let's say, according to the previous example, we had 2 and 5 as the resolved value. So here we will get 2 and 5 as the resolved array, right? This array, what we have to do, we can we need to return the sum of it. Now we have two ways. Okay, so since we know here that we will only have two promises, so what we can do easily, we will just find the value at, we will take the value, okay, and we will just return the sum of value at 0 and 1. Okay, so this is one answer. And the other approach is, like, let's say we want a generic answer where this program will be valid for any number of promises, like 10 promises are getting resolved and then we are returning some result. So in such cases, what we need to do, we will be using reduce function. Okay, in one of my previous videos where in the array transformations I have discussed what is a reduce function. So if you want to get an idea of reduce function, you can go and check it out. I will mention the link of that video in the description. So now we will see what will happen if we are using reduce. So these values will be passed here, right? Now what we will do, we will return the sum. Okay, so what it will do here, we will return value values dot reduce, and in this we will have two values a and b, and we will return the sum of it. So this is basically how it will get reduced. Now I will let's move on to the code, and there I will show using both of this code I will show, and it will be your choice which to move on with, and that's it. So let's move on to the code, and whatever little doubts are there, it will be cleared. Now what we will do, we will start from the from creating array of promises and returning, right? So we will start we will return promise dot all, and it will have array of promises, right? So we will pass promise 1 and promise 2 here. Now after this new promise is formed, it will get resolved, right? So it will return some values, or it will have some value. So we will get here values. Now what we will do, we will return values at 0 plus values at first index. Now let's try to run it. So the sample test cases are passed. Let's try to submit it. So this code has been accepted. Now I will be trying to use I will be using reduce, and we will see how to move on with that. So we will return here values dot reduce. Inside this we will have a comma b, and we will return a plus b. Now we will try to run this also. So this has also been executed. Now let's try to submit it. So this code has also been accepted. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please let me know in the comments. And in order to continue with me in this journey, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you will be notified every time I post a new video. Thank you for watching.